There is a pain that you've learnt to call the past, but what if I told you it never really stayed behind? It whispers behind every decision, disguised as intuition, masked as common sense. You believe you're choosing freely, when in fact you're merely obeying echoes of what hasn't healed. Carl Jung understood something few dare to explore. The unconscious shapes not only our perception, but also the very reality we believe we inhabit. And what we most strongly ignore is precisely what controls us the most. There's a reason certain patterns repeat themselves in your life, and it has nothing to do with bad luck, destiny, or personality. The answer isn't where you imagine, but it reveals itself when you begin to listen to what you've always tried to silence. In this video, you'll be guided into forgotten territory within yourself, not with ready-made answers, but with the right questions. Questions that awaken memories, sensations, and above all, possibilities. Perhaps what hurt you most is still guiding you, and only when this pain is illuminated will you finally be able to choose consciously. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. You believe you're in control. You think every choice results from rational thought, from your free will. But what if most of your decisions were, in reality, automatic reactions to experiences you barely remember? The unconscious is not a distant shadow. It's a silent architect, shaping the structures of your reality without asking permission. The way you relate, the paths you avoid, the dreams you don't pursue. Everything may have roots in forgotten fragments that still dictate rules in the present. Imagine a theatre. You're on stage performing, but the script was written by someone you don't know, and your lines, as spontaneous as they seem, are echoes of an old programming. That's how the unconscious operates. Like an invisible director choosing the scenery, positioning the lights, and even deciding when you should leave the stage. It's the unconscious that turns traumas into limits, memories into filters, and fears into compasses. But there is one detail that changes everything. What is repressed in the unconscious returns in the form of destiny. Carl Jung. The reality you see is not objective. It is shaped by the internal lenses you carry, shaped by unresolved emotions, pains you've learned to ignore, and experiences your psychic system has archived as a form of survival. It's like living in a house with coloured windows. Everything you see outside is tinted by what remains unhealed within you. And this colouring influences how you interpret glances, silences, compliments, and rejections. Have you ever wondered why certain situations repeat themselves like an endless cycle? Relationships ending the same way, opportunities you can't grasp, anxiety arising at the same moments. This isn't coincidence, it's the unconscious reproducing patterns that once protected you but now imprison you. It's like a scratched record. The song is different, but the melody remains the same. This leads us to something even deeper. The soul is healed by becoming conscious of its wounds. Carl Jung. The unconscious isn't an enemy, it's a guardian, a protector that archives what you couldn't face. But the problem is that the more these wounds stay hidden, the more they guide your attitudes, emotional reactions, and beliefs about love, worthiness, and belonging. A compliment might feel like manipulation, criticism might feel like abandonment. The unconscious distorts reality to remain loyal to what was once necessary for your survival. That's why inner healing starts with a simple yet powerful gesture, self-observation, not with judgment, but with curiosity and depth. When you start noticing where your impulses, repulsions, and silences come from, you begin reclaiming your power of choice. True freedom emerges in the space between stimulus and response, where you stop reacting by default and start acting with presence. But are we really ready to look inward without masks? Introspection is the only way out. Carl Jung. The unconscious shapes your reality because that's where the deepest roots of your emotional history reside. Denying this means continuing to lose yourself in the same crossroads, trying to change the landscape without changing the lenses. The journey of transformation doesn't start outside. It begins with the courage to descend into the cellars of your soul and shed light on what's always lived in the shadows. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also liberating. And then everything makes sense. When you understand that external reality mirrors your internal reality, you stop trying to control the world and start caring for your inner world. The unconscious isn't a prison. It's an invitation to freedom, if you're willing to explore it. Ultimately, the pain you've ignored doesn't want to punish you. It simply wants to be heard. And in this process, something within you finally finds peace. But what few understand is the greatest tragedy of the soul is following a path that isn't yours, guided by pains you never allowed yourself to feel. Carl Jung. The pain you didn't embrace didn't disappear. It disguised itself, taking new forms. It reappears as anxiety, disproportionate anger, or that emptiness you feel even when everything seems fine. But perhaps the most dangerous is when this pain disguises itself as direction, becoming the silent compass behind your emotional choices. And thus, without realizing it, you build your life based on the fear of reliving something instead of the hope of experiencing something new. You avoid love because you've been hurt before. You claim you prefer solitude. But deep down you fear abandonment. You choose a secure job, not out of passion, but from fear of failing again. Each decision is carefully rationalized, yet deeply rooted in experiences that still hurt. You call it maturity, sensibility, but perhaps it's just pain disguised as wisdom. But there's one detail that changes everything. What you resist persists, and what you accept transforms. Carl Jung. Unhealed pain isn't just an unresolved feeling. It's a lens, a distortion of reality. It's like an emotional map drawn during times of crisis, which you continue using even after the storm has passed. The problem? It always leads you to the same place. Frustration, repetition, sabotage. Worse, you believe you're choosing freely, when in reality you're just avoiding reliving what you haven't integrated. It's as if there's a lost child inside you, holding the steering wheel. Each time something threatens her, she pulls you in the opposite direction, away from risk and away from life. You don't approach those who could love you because you already know how it ends. You don't allow yourself to fail because failure reminds you of a time when you weren't enough. And this child doesn't want you to suffer again. But in doing so, she stops you from truly living. This leads us to something even deeper. Encountering the shadow is the first step toward liberation. Carl Jung. This unhealed pain isn't a punishment. It's a warning. A signal that something within you still beats, still seeks recognition, still wants to be understood. The problem is that as long as you don't allow yourself to genuinely feel, you'll keep making choices to numb yourself. And although numbing works temporarily, it robs you of sensitivity, and with it the capacity to choose authentically. Have you noticed how some people always seem to fall into the same situations? Abusive relationships, suffocating jobs, draining friendships. This isn't bad luck. It's pain drawing familiar routes, paths where, despite unhappiness, we know what to expect, because the uncertainty of the new feels more threatening than the discomfort of the familiar. And so we continue, betraying ourselves without even noticing. But are we willing to listen to what this pain has to tell us? One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. Facing pain means dismantling illusions. It means realizing that many decisions you fiercely defend with logic are actually emotional defense mechanisms. Admitting this is painful, but it's also the beginning of freedom. Because when you realize it's not your pain that defines you, but how you transform it, something within you awakens. Something that had been dormant, waiting for this moment. Ultimately, pain doesn't want to limit you. It wants to show you where you've lost yourself. And by embracing it, you begin to see that the answers you're seeking don't lie in more control, more security, or more certainty. They lie in more presence, more listening, more courage to feel. Only then can you forge a new path with a new compass. And then, everything makes sense. Unhealed pain ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally, because it points precisely to where the key to your expansion lies. And for the first time, you feel you can walk without fear of yourself. Because now it's no longer pain that guides you, it's consciousness. But what few understand is that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why certain situations seem to follow you? Why you attract such similar people? Why, even after promising yourself, this time will be different, everything happens exactly as before? These repetitions aren't coincidences. They're revelations. Little mirrors life places before you to see what remains unhealed, to help you realize that trauma is trying to communicate. Trauma doesn't live in the past. It repeats itself in the present. It isn't satisfied having been experienced once. It needs to be understood. And until this happens, it will continue presenting itself in different scenarios, with different characters, but always the same script. Like a cycle feeding off your resistance to face it. The more you run, the more it appears. But there's one detail that changes everything. Nothing repressed remains harmless. Carl Jung. Trauma doesn't repeat itself to punish you, but to teach you. It recreates unresolved situations as the unconscious attempts to find a different outcome, to give the past another chance to be rewritten. Yet without awareness, you experience these cycles as if trapped by a cruel fate. You fail to notice that you might simply be responding with the same strategies, to the same old pains. It's like a maze. You enter and try to find the exit, but always end up at the same point, because the route you know is the one drawn by trauma. Ironically, the exit lies in stopping, in ceasing to run, in returning to the centre, to the origin point, and listening to what was ignored. Trauma seeks listening, not explanation. It doesn't want rationalisation. It wants to be felt, processed, and ultimately released. This leads us to something even deeper. What you most avoid holds what you most need. Carl Jung. Each repetition carries an opportunity for liberation, but it only becomes an opportunity when recognised. As long as you remain on autopilot, you'll keep calling bad luck what is actually a pattern. You'll keep blaming others for what your unconscious attracts. You'll continue trying to change the world, so you don't have to change internally. And this inevitably imprisons you. Do you find yourself in relationships with emotionally unavailable people? Perhaps you're repeating the pain of a childhood where love and presence were scarce. Do you sabotage projects with potential? Perhaps you're reliving the insecurity of having been criticised for dreaming too big. Do you avoid conflicts at all costs? Perhaps you're just trying not to relive the chaos of an unstable home. All of these are unresolved stories seeking a new interpretation. But are we ready to rewrite these stories? Real healing happens when we stop identifying with pain. Carl Jung. Trauma is not who you are. It's something that happened to you. But when unhealed, it merges with your identity. You act as if you're limited, incapable, unworthy. This belief shapes your decisions, relationships, and worldview. Healing begins when you start asking yourself, what if this pain isn't punishment, but a clue? A clue about where I've been hurt and where I can free myself. Ultimately, repetitions are invitations, subtle calls to return to the origin, but this time with maturity, awareness, and love. Not to relive the pain, but to embrace the part of you frozen there. By doing this, you change the ending, you break the cycle, and for the first time, choose something new. And then, everything makes sense. Trauma ceases to be a prison and becomes a portal, a path inward where finally you can choose with clarity, courage, and compassion. Life, which once seemed to repeat the same story, starts writing new pages, because now you hold the pen. But this leads us to something even deeper. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. Carl Jung. Parts of you were silenced early on and now live in the dark. Unauthorized emotions, repressed desires, truths you had to hide from yourself to feel accepted, loved, safe. What was hidden didn't disappear, it became shadow. The shadow, contrary to what many believe, isn't evil. It's simply everything you are forced to stop being to adapt. These forgotten parts remain alive, manifesting in impulses you don't understand. Disproportionate reactions and feelings arising seemingly without reason. This is the unconscious trying to surface, seeking recognition. Because what you reject within yourself continues controlling you and only loses power when illuminated. But there's one detail that changes everything. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. Bringing light to what remained hidden is more than an act of courage. It's a return. A reunion with parts of yourself suffocated in the name of survival. It's looking your anger in the eyes and recognizing the pain it's protecting. It's embracing your fear and discovering the child still afraid of abandonment. It's allowing your sadness to speak after years of silent smiles. This process is like lighting a candle in a room locked for decades. Initially, everything seems confusing. Shapes are distorted. Gradually, with patience and presence, you recognize what's always been there. You realize the shadow doesn't seek to destroy you, but to complete you, to remind you of what you lost trying to be who others expected. This leads us to something even deeper. The gold you seek lies where you least want to look. Carl Jung. True freedom doesn't mean eliminating darkness. It means integrating it. Understanding that light and shadow form a whole. You don't need perfection to be whole. You don't need to hide wounds to deserve love. Instead, recognizing them holds your most authentic strength. Inner healing occurs when you stop running from yourself and start embracing all you carry. The shadow holds unexplored talents, dormant potentials, parts once judged as wrong, but now with maturity can become your greatest allies. When you illuminate these forgotten spaces, something powerful happens. Shame dissolves, guilt turns into compassion, fear converts into courage. And finally, you move closer to who you truly are. But are we ready to see ourselves unfiltered? Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Carl Jung. Looking inward requires presence. It demands that you stop distracting yourself externally and start exploring your silences, accepting the truth, even if it dismantles your certainties. Embracing discomfort instead of chasing quick answers. Only then does pain transform into direction, and shadow turns into light. Ultimately, bringing light to what remained hidden isn't about fixing who you are. It's about remembering who you were before you had to protect yourself. Allowing all parts, even those you judged wrong, to reclaim their place within you. Because true healing isn't elimination, its reintegration, and then everything makes sense. The unconscious ceases to be a scary place and becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where each forgotten fragment can finally be welcomed. When this happens, you don't just know yourself, you recognize yourself. Only then can you truly choose consciously. Yet what few understand is that most choices we make aren't genuinely choices. They are reactions, impulses masked as decisions, influenced by old memories, voices still echoing inside us. Often we think we're choosing the best path, when in reality we're just avoiding what once hurt us: fear of rejection, failure, abandonment. Thus, fear becomes our most intimate counselor. But it doesn't guide, it imprisons. Acting out of fear doesn't seem negative at first glance. After all, fear protects us. But when it takes control, it prevents us from growing, loving, trying. Opportunities become evaluated not for what they offer, but for what they might take away. Instead of seeking expansion, we limit ourselves to maintaining comfort zones, emotional stability, and the illusion of security. Yet there's one detail that changes everything. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. Choosing consciously is revolutionary. It means observing your impulses before following them. It means creating enough silence within to hear what comes from intuition and what arises from trauma. It's looking at an opportunity and realizing, does this attract me because it's true, or because it protects me from something I fear? That's the difference between living freely and repeating patterns, between living intentionally and living by inertia. Consciousness doesn't shout, it whispers. It emerges when you pause, breathe, reflect. It reminds you that you don't need to act as you once did when wounded. You can make choices that aren't reactions. You can be new even while carrying old memories. Choosing consciously reveals that many decisions you previously made were never truly yours. This leads us to something even deeper. The soul needs roots and wings. Neither grows in fear. Carl Jung. Choosing consciously is, above all, an act of self-love. It's declaring, I respect myself enough not to abandon myself anymore. Every time you choose out of fear, you're sidelining yourself, subconsciously saying, I don't trust myself. Consciousness restores your power, not to control everything, but to respond with presence rather than panic, to build, not just avoid ruins. This change doesn't have to be monumental. It starts in small details. A yes that once would have been a no. Silence replacing justifications. A step you've never dared take. Each micro-choice made with presence and truth rewrites your life's narrative. The more consciously you choose, the less weight fear carries. But are we ready to choose from the soul, not the wound? The wound is the place where the light enters you. Carl Jung. Ultimately, choosing consciously isn't about ensuring everything goes right. It's accepting that even if things go wrong, you acted truthfully. It's being at peace with decisions made by you, not by the scars within. Healing doesn't remove challenges, but changes how you face them. In this new encounter, you recognize yourself. Then, everything makes sense. You look back and realize every pain, repetition, shadow led you here, to the moment you choose, not from fear of repeating the past, but from love for the present. And within this choice lies something sacred, the freedom to be fully yourself. And now, what does this mean for you? Perhaps the answer was within you all along. You've spent your life protecting yourself from pain, trying to forget, bury, ignore it. Paradoxically, the effort not to feel has allowed pain to shape your existence. Unseen pain became the secret script behind your choices, silently deciding who to love, what to avoid, where to stay. Then you realize you're not living freely, You're avoiding old wounds. You thought you were careful, but you were conditioned by memories never consciously revisited. Experiences turned into absolute truths. I'm not enough. Love hurts. Dreaming is dangerous. Fear stopped being an exception. It became your lifestyle. Then, everything makes sense. You understand the world didn't close itself off. You did in trying to protect yourself. The key always lay in the most obvious and feared place. In emotions you rejected, traumas unintegrated, and unconscious never listened to. Ultimately, the answer was always there. Trauma wasn't the end, but the beginning. Pain wasn't the enemy, but the guide. The unconscious wasn't a dark place. It was the womb of your truth. Every shadow you refused to see was a part of you longing to return home. But are we ready to accept this? Accepting isn't about getting rid of pain, but giving it a new place. A space to rest, teach, no longer rule. And when this happens, you don't just change, you awaken. If you've come this far, you're no longer the same. Now you know that seemingly dormant pain, whispered advice, shaped paths, silently influenced your self-view and worldview. Now you can change that. This new consciousness doesn't eliminate pain but transforms it, giving you the eyes to see what guided you. Silently can now be heard respectfully, not fearfully. Trauma stops being a sentence and becomes a language. Listening dissolves it, making room for genuine, liberating choices. Recognizing the source of your emotions restores your right to choose truthfully, to love openly, fail without abandoning yourself, build a life from within rather than desperately avoiding past hurts. And this is freedom. Now's the moment to take the first step. Start applying these ideas today and share your experience in the comments. Tell me, which part of this reflection touched you the most? When did you realize something unknown guided you? Share your story. Your words might be the mirror someone needs to see themselves clearly. If you'd like to delve deeper into this topic, I strongly recommend watching the video linked above. It complements this journey and can further expand your awareness. See you in the next video.